Hey guys, welcome to the video. Salt here. Today we're going to be going over the Archgun the Mandonel. But before we start, let's go over our commenter board. The first and top commenter of the last video was Untruths. And then we have a recent channel supporter board here of Elite Reverser, Whoop-de-Wham, and Nice Bear. Thank you so much for your support. Unique and interesting things about the Mandonel is that it has a quick shot and a charge shot mode. The quick shot acts like a shotgun, and in fact, the Mandonel can actually use shotgun arcanes, and it also has innate radiation. And now the charge shot mode fires a laser that leaves a radiation field behind for 8 seconds, and shooting through this field grants increased damage, status chance, crit damage, punch through, projectile speed, and lets shots bounce 2 times. So ideally, you're going to want to do the fully charged shot first, get that field down, and then do the quick shots through that field. Before we go over the build today, I want to go over some other builds I was testing up against it. And the first one I was testing was this one here, which is a viral heat build using Shotgun Vendetta and secondary Enervate. And I was testing this one up against a corrosive cold build using Frostbite and secondary Enervate. And the corrosive cold build was good, but it wasn't as good as the viral heat. And I thought this was the one I was going to settle on. But then my friend Elite Reverser, he said, hey, why don't you try out Cascadia Flare as the secondary arcane? And in that case, that takes care of our flat damage for us, but then we need to account for the critical chance. And so you just switch these 2 mods here into the critical chance mods. So we have the config C here, which is what Elite Reverser suggested. And when I tested this one up against my config A setup, it actually beat it out. It beat it out by 7.97%. Now, do keep in mind that I do 3 runs per build, and so that's not a huge sample size. If I was to do like 10 runs per build, I might have a more accurate, number for which one is better than what. It's just that I don't have time to do 30 runs per day testing 3 different builds. So I just do 3 runs per build. So yeah, config C is the one we're going to be showcasing today because again, this was the best one that we came up with today. And the last thing I wanted to mention before we go over the build is why Shotgun Vendetta over Crux? Because that's a great question. And I actually do think they're kind of side grades to each other. So I wanted to do some math and see which one of these two, Shotgun Vendetta, which gives us 180% multi-shot, or Primary Crux, which gives us 300% status chance, gave us actually more chance to produce statuses. And at first that seems confusing. It's like, well, obviously status chance does, but multi-shot increases the amount of instances that have the potential to produce status. So sometimes multi-shot can give you more status chance than status chance does. And so I did the math with Primary Crux, looking at just the base config here. It would be 60 status chance times 8 pellets base would give us an average of 4 statuses and an 80% chance to produce the 5th status. And then Shotgun Vendetta, which this would bring us up to a 22 multi-shot base times 15 status chance, which would be the base status chance, gives us 3 instances of statuses on average with a 30% chance for a 4th status. So Crux does technically give you about 1.5 more average statuses. However, that's really all Crux does. Well, other than the ammo efficiency, which is quite nice. But other than the ammo efficiency, that's really all status chance does. Multi-shot not only gives you a bit more of a chance to produce statuses, it also gives you more instances of everything, of damage, of crits, of just everything, because you have more pellets coming out. And so out of these two, I went with Shotgun Vendetta. I believe you're going to get more value out of it. However, Crux still has quite a lot of merit. It does increase your actual status chance by about 1.5 more than Shotgun Vendetta. Now let's go over the mods. Remember, we're not using a secondary Enervate build. Secondary Enervate usually deals with all of our critical chance for us. So now we have to put critical chance mods on the build. So we have Parallax Scope, which is going to bring us up to a 50% critical chance. And then Critical Focus is plus 60% critical chance and damage when aiming. This should bring us up to, I believe it's 65% critical chance. There's one more thing I wanted to mention about the unique trait here, where when you're shooting through that radiation field, one of the things says it gives you plus 10% critical chance. Now, unfortunately, the wiki says that this plus 10% critical chance is absolute critical chance, which I'm really hoping it's not, because if it actually is absolute critical chance, that means it doesn't give you anything. It probably just means that DE coded this incorrectly. I hope it actually means plus 10% final critical chance, because if it was final critical chance, instead of 65 with these two, that would just add that 10% at the very end, so it would become 75. So I think this is possibly final critical chance, giving us 75, or it's not working at all because they coded it as absolute critical chance and we are just at 65. One or the other. I couldn't really test what one that was because they're so close to each other there. So it's either a 65 or 75% critical chance. Next, we have primed dual rounds for 110% multi-shot, automatic trigger for plus 60% fire rate, hallowed bullets for plus 80% critical damage. In the next two mod slots, we're going to be making viral here. So we have the 6060 toxic mod of contamination casing and the 6060 cold mod of hypothermic shell to make viral. And then at the on the last mod here, we have combustion rounds, which is the big 120% heat mod. This is going to allow us to stack more heat procs than just using the 6060. That's why we use the big one here. In the primary arcane slot, we're going to be using Shotgun Vendetta for 180% multi-shot and plus 75% reload speed for 15 seconds. This is the one I believe will give you the most value. However, if you want to ensure that your weapon, that the Mandonel, well, this is specifically if you're using it as a heavy weapon, but if you're using it as a heavy weapon and you want to ensure that the Mandonel is out all the time, you never run out of ammo, then Crux is pretty decent there, because not only do you get a little bit more status chance out of it, but you get that ammo efficiency. So that's just something to consider there. Shotgun Vendetta is stronger than Crux, but Crux has the potential to stay out longer than with the Shotgun Vendetta build. And in the secondary arcane, we're using Cascadia Flare. This is on a heat status effect. We get 12% damage for 10 seconds, and this stacks all the way up to 480% flat damage. This is how you build out the Archgun, the Mandonel. I hope you guys liked it, and if you did, consider leaving a like and subscribing for future content. So now we'll have a 5-minute gameplay portion showcasing the weapon, and when that's done, we'll come back to the Orbiter and we'll give it its final score and rank. So I'll see you guys again after the gameplay. Alrighty, we're about to start this 5-minute gameplay portion up here. We got the Mandonel. Let's go ahead and hack the turbine. We'll get into it. I do have Proteus Dispensary on me. That way I can make sure I'm topped up on heavy ammo, just so I can give you guys a good showcase. You're going to want to start off by doing a charge shot. That way you get that radiation field up. And then do some quick fires through it. Remember that field only lasts for 8 seconds, so you're going to want to refresh it every now and then. There's kind of two ways to do this. You can either just cast one field per magazine and then just spam the other like 29 shots. Or you can do like a field and like 15-ish shots and then another field and 15-ish shots. That's really up to you. I think if you're trying to cast 3 fields per magazine, I think that's overkill. I think you either go with 1 field per magazine or 2 fields. Just because, like, even with a fire rate mod, it takes a while to charge that stupid charge shot. Now, also the base color of the Mandonel, I'm gonna cast a dispensary here. The base color of the Mandonel is very hard to see that radiation field. And so I actually turned mine bright white. So it's a little bit easier. I don't know if you can see that. It's a little bit easier to see that radiation field with bright white. That also might be dependent on your graphics. I'm a poor with not a great computer, so I don't have great graphics, but maybe you have good graphics and maybe the colors look different or the effects look different. But for me, bright white is the most noticeable for me. Where are the enemies at? There they are. There's a little group from here. So something else I wanted to mention is that if you look on the wiki, it'll say that radiation sources are multiplicative on this weapon. You know, they use that buzzword, multiplicative. Oh my goodness, must be amazing. But I wanted to see how amazing it was. Because I was like, do I need to go hard into radiation on this build? Do I need to use, you know, the radiation multi-shot mod, whatever it's got, contamination something? Or do I need to use both 6060s to make radiation? Because normally I don't like radiation. Radiation's a horrible status. And so I did some testing. The way I did this testing was I'm going to try to explain this and play at the same time, so I might suck at one or the other, or maybe both. The way I tested this is I used primer rubedo line barrel, because a lot of multiplicative sources, they need flat damage to actually like function. So I used primer rubedo line barrel for the flat damage. And then I used two 60/60s to make radiation. So what is that? Heat and electric, I believe. And then I did this again, and I used two 60/60s to make magnetic. And then I did it one more time to use two 60/60s to make blast, just to make sure that like all the non-radiations were counting the same numbers. And the non-radiation 60/60s were 120 whites and 241 yellows. And the radiation 60/60s, when I was doing that, were 122 whites and 244 yellows. So yes, technically radiation does do more damage than other elements on the weapon, but it's like 1 or 2% more damage. And I don't believe that is worth going hard into one of the worst statuses in the game on the weapon for. I don't think it's worth putting more radiation on. Radiation is like pretty much the only status that most of the time acts as a damage decrease. It makes enemies stop and start fighting each other, so they're no longer funneling towards you. They're just like stopped in place fighting each other. They turn their heads to fight each other, so now it's harder to get headshots on them. So a lot of times radiation is a damage decrease, and yeah, for a 1 or 2% increase, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go hard into radiation. All right, we have the Acolyte here. This is Angst. Angst is pretty good to test on. He doesn't really have anything weird about him. You see, it chunks him down. It does respectable damage versus him. Not amazing, but it's respectable. All right, we are at 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Well, Thrax is coming out pretty soon. He chunks down Thraxus pretty well. All right, and that is 5 minutes. We're at 372 kills. Let's go ahead and head back to the Orbiter now. Welcome back to the Orbiter, guys. So let's go over how the Mandonel did in its 3 10-minute runs on Steel Path Lewis Circulus. It got 818, 789, and 791 kills, putting it in the A tier for kill per minute potential. Now, for anyone interested in how the initial build, the one I thought was going to win with Enervate did, that one got 726, 766, and 729 kills. Now, that would still be in the A tier, but if we do the average of both of those sets there, the average of the one I thought was going to win with Enervate was 740, and the average of the Flare setup that Elite Reverser suggested was 799. So that should be a 7.97% difference there. Now, when it comes to single target damage, it's pretty good. It's pretty good single target damage. Good versus the Acolyte, good versus Thraxus, just because you stack a lot of heat procs there. The Acolyte, you can't stack heat procs, but I just think the raw damage kind of carries you with the Acolyte. So there's a lot against him. It's not completely deleting Thraxus. It's not completely deleting the Acolyte, so we're not going to give it S tier, but I think A tier is definitely fair for single target damage there. Now, ease of use, it's pretty easy to use. I mean, it's a wide shotgun. The thing is that you do have to kind of remember, like every 15 shots ish that's what I use. I use the magazine. Like once I see my magazine half full, I know I have to do another charge shot. But like when you start a mag, go ahead and charge shot, get about halfway through the mag and charge shot again, and then you're pretty good there. As long as you remember to do that, it's not that hard to use. But that does just add something else that you have to remember all the time. You also have that one mod, critical focus, I believe it is, that makes you aim in. You don't have to aim carefully, of course. You're shooting a big shotgun that's pretty easy to hit, but you do technically have to aim in with that. So I think we'll give it A tier for ease of use. It's very easy to use. You just have to remember to charge shot like 2 times ish per mag. So that's my take on the weapon. Tell me what you guys think. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have an amazing day. All right, bye.